Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Hi guys, Francois here. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send show. This is episode number 184, and today we're going to talk about Cisco, and more specifically talk about their presentation at Mobility Field Day 4 a couple of weeks back. So today I'm talking alone. As you can notice, Roel is actually traveling to Canada, and we'll be joining forces together this week to create some content for the Clear to Send podcast, as well as working together on the presentation that we have, the upcoming presentation that we have for WLPC Europe. So stay tuned for that. Excited to see Roel in person again. I feel like this year we've met, way more than in the past, so it's actually awesome. But today the agenda is me talking about Cisco and the presentation that they did at Mobility Field Day 4 a couple of weeks back. And Cisco was kind of like, the last company being announced. And they wanted to participate to that great event, I guess, because, everyone else was participating. And they came and talked about three subjects. They talked about their new, wireless Catalyst offering. So talked about their new wireless Catalyst controllers and their new wireless Catalyst access points. And they also talked about IoT and how they're trying to face the IoT challenge in the enterprise space. And the last topic they talked about was open roaming. So in this episode today, I'm just going to, review a little bit what they talked about, and then, give my 2 cents about the different topics. If you want to watch the videos, if you actually want to watch the presentations and get all the details directly from Cisco, we put the link in the show notes. If you go to cleartosend.net/184. So on top of the audio podcast we produce, we also produce show notes, which is pretty much like a blog article, and we include a lot of links and resources you can actually click on and get more information about. So in the show notes, you can actually get the links to the videos, to the Mobility Field Day videos, and you can rewatch the whole presentations. So you'll see that they broke it down in 3 different videos, the one on Catalyst, the one on IoT, and the one on open roaming, and you can go back and watch them. Also, in the show notes, we also share all the articles that were written or created by the other Mobility Field Day delegates. So you can go over there on the webpage, cleartosend.net/184, and you can find the links to, the related articles created by the other delegates. So right now we have one article written by Lee Badman entitled "The Network is Code, Cisco at Mobility Field Day 4." And we have 2 from Scott Lester. One is called Decoupling the WLAN, and the other one is called A New Way to Onboard. And those 3, I guess, articles are talking about Cisco at Mobility Field Day. So, go ahead, check them out to get a little bit more information and complement the podcast. All right, let's talk about, Cisco and what they presented about. So the first one is their presentation on the new wireless offering, and this is the new Catalyst. I guess they rebranded it the new Catalyst offering, and this is pretty much a new line of product that Cisco have been working on for a little while now. We've learned about it maybe late last year. Or at least I learned about it late last year publicly, and they've been working on the different products since then. And so by now they have a new lineup of wireless LAN controllers, and they have a new lineup of access points. So what's new about this Catalyst offering is that they are based on the iOS XE OS, right? Instead of being based on the Air OS platform, right? The Air OS is the traditional wireless OS that we had on our controllers, access points for a long time now, and it became a little hard to maintain, and so they wanted to to have something a little bit more flexible from the software standpoint, and also something they can integrate into their new software-defined networks, DNS center, and all of that. So they decided to create their new wireless ecosystem around the iOS XE and around the Catalyst brand. So they briefly talked about that and about the advantages of having, the iOS XE platform. It brings a lot of advantages and a lot of flexibility in terms of firmware, card upgrades, the way they develop new versions of the controllers, the way they test it. So we should be able to get something that's a little bit more robust, less bugs, and easier to deploy without having to cut the network or for too long. So that's great news. Plus it integrates with DNS Center, and then you can use open config, you can use young models, you can use APIs, a whole bunch of new network techniques to interact with this new equipment, maybe get some data out of them, and then create your own automation, your own dashboards, and so on. So that's very exciting about the new product. I hope it's going to be a little bit more stable than the AirOS platform, where it's kind of notorious to have a lot of bugs. So hopefully, the new Catalyst platform is more stable for us to use, and I think it will be. So pretty excited about that. So in terms of new controllers that they have released, we now have access to the controllers in different form factors, right? You can still buy an appliance, and they actually have an appliance for, the bigger controllers. So one called Catalyst 9880 and the Catalyst 9840. These are both appliances, and then they'll support high number of access points. Then they introduced a new member to the family, which they called the Catalyst 9800L. And this one got released, I think, earlier, beginning of August 2019, so about a month ago. And this guy is aimed to, support smaller environments. It's a smaller form factors. I think it has the same form factor as the AirOS WLC3504. So you can actually put two side by side in a 1U unit in your network rack. And this guy is aimed to support smaller deployment, I said. And it comes in two different form factors. You can buy it having uplink interface as copper interfaces, or you can buy it having the uplink interfaces as SFP interface. So it's, I guess they studied the market. They saw that they had an opportunity for an appliance, I guess, for smaller deployments that people wanted to. And then they saw that some people had, fiber connection back to the core network, and other people had Ethernet back to the core network. So they created a product that would fit nicely in those environments for those people who had smaller sites and wanted a physical controller on site. And the last alternative is the Catalyst 9800 CL for cloud. And then this is the new cloud offering where the controller is actually software. So if you want to, you could install it wherever you want to. You could install it on a VM in your internal database, or you can install it, in the cloud, AWS. And they also announced that you can now install it on Google Cloud. So now the new controller code is actually, it's pretty, you have a lot of different ways to install it, a lot of, deployment scenarios in which you can just try to find which controller would best fit your environment, right? The cloud offering is very appealing for a lot of deployments, especially for the, smaller sites. You could just deploy one controller in the cloud or one controller in a centralized data center, and then use that to manage all your access points remotely. So that's for the controller side of things. They also talked about the fact that the newest version of the controller code is the 16.12, and they're working to have this version 16.12 be used as the next MD release, right? We also asked them about the AirOS platform. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to just try to maintain it? Up to the new features that they're introducing in the Catalyst line of product. And they told us that they're working on the AirOS version 8.10, and then this 8.10 will be the new MD release. If you buy the new Wi-Fi 6 access points, I guess. Going back to the iOS version 16.12 is ready for WPA3, and it supports both the 802.11ac and the 802.11ax access points. It talks to DNS Center, obviously, and then it also talks to ICE, Prime, and CMX. So if you currently have an environment where you leverage ICE, Prime, and CMX, you could replace your AirOS controller by a new Catalyst controller without any issue. And even if you have AC access points, older AC access points, you could totally replace your AirOS controller. That said, they also have this tool where you can import your AirOS controller configurations, and then it will create the Catalyst 9800 configurations for you. So if you're thinking of migrating to the new platform, Cisco is actually providing some tools to help you out, and this should ease the process. It's easy to say for me on the podcast. I don't really know in practice. If you have thousands of access points, I'm guessing it would be, a little bit of work. But at least they're trying to provide, tools for us to help us out. So we talked about the controller. Now, if we talk about the access points, so nothing new here announced at Mobility Field Day. They talked about the 3 new access points that they've released this year, the Wi-Fi 6 access points. So the Catalyst 9115, the Catalyst 9117, and the Catalyst 9120 are the 3 access points that Cisco is currently selling right now. So here, nothing really new. We already knew about the 3 access points. If you go on Cisco website, you can get all the details about the 3 models. The 9120 is the one that they're very pushing, because the access point actually include their own RF ASICs chip that allows them to be a little bit more accurate when it comes to detecting interference, detecting DFS events, and actually provides a little bit more value add to the Wi-Fi 6 access point. We actually interviewed Fred Niehaus from Cisco back at Cisco Live. So if you go back in the episodes, in the Clear episodes, you can actually listen to our interview. And Fred goes in details into the hardware that built into that Catalyst 9120. So that AP is actually pretty nice. It's not very big. It has a nice form factor. It's very appealing design-wise, and I think that's going to be very popular access point for Cisco in the near future. That said, we're still waiting for the model up in the line of APs, because the 9120 would be the equivalent to the 2800 series, but we still don't have the equivalent to the 3800 series or even the 4800 series in the Wi-Fi 6 categories of access points, or in the Catalyst line of products. So that's what's pretty much it for the Catalyst offering. We didn't really learn anything new, and nothing new got announced in that regard at Mobility Field Day. It was just nice to have a summary of what Cisco has been working on in the past year in terms of developing their new Catalyst line of product. Now I will just be very interesting to hear about real world scenarios, on-site deployment, and see how the new product is doing compared to to the AirOS generations. And I feel like the AOS is still going to be there for a little while. A lot of people are not going to be able to upgrade because they still have legacy access points. They still have N access points. They even maybe have G access points. Some people are stuck in the older version of AOS because they still have older access point that they have to replace. And sometimes it's just not one access point here and there. It's like hundreds of access points. So I think the transition, Cisco wants everyone to transition to the Catalyst platform, but I think that transition will take a little while to happen, and we'll see in the future how it plays out. So the second topic they talked about was IoT, right? And that was actually very interesting, and I enjoyed that topic a lot. I wasn't expecting to hear about IoT that much at Mobility Field Day. I was actually expecting to hear about Wi-Fi 6 more, but I guess apparently Wi-Fi 6 is past for the vendors. They're already onto the next thing. And IoT, so we heard about Cisco and IoT. We also heard about other vendors. And IoT is just, if we look at the landscape right now, we are noticing that IoT is making it to the enterprise space. So a lot of companies are seeing the need to onboard IoT devices into their enterprise network. And Cisco is looking at these challenges and trying to find some solutions and trying to see how they can face these challenges and find some solutions. And in the real life, it's true, and especially it's true in brand new buildings. I've heard a lot about people deploying Wi-Fi in brand new buildings, and now the building itself has a lot of connected devices, right? A lot of connected lights, a lot of connected doors, a lot of connected security features, and all these devices need to be connected to the Wi-Fi, to the internet, I guess, right? And then it could be connected to the internet using the enterprise network. So now, the building management team is looking at us to see if we can onboard those devices and see if we can, have everything part of the enterprise network. The only thing with that is that IoT is bringing a lot of challenges. First of all, IoT is not just Wi-Fi, right? IoT devices could be connected to the internet using Wi-Fi, using Bluetooth, using Zigbee, using Thread. So a lot of technologies, are part of the IoT landscape, and we need to be able to have the hardware that supports all of these technologies, right? The last thing you want is then, a whole bunch of overlay networks and a whole bunch of boxes under the ceiling, handling all the different technologies themselves, right? So that's one big challenge with IoT. Second big challenge is onboarding, right? Sometimes these devices don't have they don't have a screen, they don't have a keyboard, they don't have any way to onboard easily. So it's if you want to onboard a large quantity of IoT devices, it becomes a struggle. So how do you connect a large scale of devices to the network is another challenge we have to face. And then another one is managing. How do you manage all these devices? With IoT comes scale. So we're going to see a lot of devices, coming into our environment, our networks, and we need to be able to manage all. So how do you manage all these IoT devices is another challenge Cisco is looking at. And the last one is security, right? How do you make sure that these IoT devices are secure? How do you make sure that they don't create a breach into your enterprise network? So Cisco just thought about all of this and trying to see how they could, solve all these IoT challenges using their solution, their platform, their hardware, their software. And so one of the solutions to the IoT challenge is to try to integrate all the different IoT technologies within their enterprise access points. So if you look at the new Catalyst access points, the 9115 and then the 9117 also have Bluetooth beacons built into the access points. So we've seen that from a lot of different vendors as well. Aruba, Mist, and other vendors also have a Bluetooth radio within their Wi-Fi access point that they could leverage for BLE applications. Most of the time, they leverage it for location services, but you could leverage it for other applications in the IoT space. So now that Bluetooth support is coming to the Catalyst line of product, and on top of that, something that's very interesting and specific to Cisco is that on their new Catalyst 9120, they now have the ability to install a Docker container on the access points to run some sort of application in order to support other IoT technologies. Right. So the example they were giving us is that you could actually run a Zigbee gateway directly on the access points. Right. So the Catalyst 9120 supports Bluetooth, but on top of supporting Bluetooth, it also supports Zigbee and Thread. So you could have an environment where you have your APs, the 9120, supporting an environment. And then onto the access points, you could have the Zigbee gateway, so the access points can actually talk to the different Zigbee IoT devices, and potentially onboard and manage all of them, right? So right now in the enterprise space, Cisco was talking about an application where you could change the electronic labeling connected to the Wi-Fi using Zigbee. Just leveraging the access points that you have under the ceiling, right? Not having to deploy additional hardware and not having to deploy an overlay network. So that's actually a big thing, and it can potentially save a lot of money to the enterprise. So I think that's a trend we're going to start to see in other vendors trying to support more than just the Wi-Fi communications using their hardware. Maybe the Bluetooth, they're gonna use the hardware to solve the IoT challenge. Maybe we could see the access points used to support maybe 5G communication in the future. I'm not sure, but that would be nice to just have a centralized hardware infrastructure that we could use for multiple applications. Everything is becoming software driven. So if they just incorporate all the hardware within the same access point, that would be nice if we could just support different applications. So that was one of the big thing they talked about. Something else that was big for me and that I didn't really know about IoT is the Thread technology. So Thread is apparently is becoming very popular because you can actually provide an IPv6 to the client devices, the IoT client devices. So when they introduced IPv6 addressing, they said that at one point everything would be connected, and then they were talking about IoT, and then your jackets will be connected, your t-shirts, and everything will need an IP address. So maybe that's the beginning of it. Maybe Thread is the beginning of that, and we'll start to see a lot of devices getting IPv6 addresses. That will ease the communication back to the network, I guess. And maybe the integration with the enterprise space. Cisco actually presented a slide where they would just forecast, the number of IoT devices and which technology would support them. And you could see that Thread was increasing, just like the number of Thread supported devices, I guess I should say, was increasing just like the number of Bluetooth devices and Wi-Fi devices. And by the way, Wi-Fi is not going anywhere in that regard. So I was happy to see that in the forecast numbers. So that was pretty much it about IoT. We also had interesting discussion about what the 2.4 frequency band will become, and looking at all this technology, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Thread, Wi-Fi 6, support for 2.4. It looks like all these technologies are working in the 2.4 space, and I wouldn't be surprised is the 2.4 band becomes an IoT band. And then we will look at, on the enterprise Wi-Fi, applications, we'll look at the 5 gigahertz band or potentially the 6 gigahertz band to support our business critical applications. So let's see what happens in the future about IoT, but this is very exciting. We're starting to see more and more support on the hardware, even the software side of things. Cisco obviously is trying to integrate all of that with their DNS center to have DNS center, manage the devices, handle the security, and onboard the devices. So it's very exciting to see that maybe in the future we'll be able to integrate everything together. And the last topic they talked about was OpenRoaming, and OpenRoaming generated a lot of discussions, a lot of blog articles also. And so open roaming, once again, it's not new. We talked about it. We actually, back on the podcast, we interviewed Jerome Henry about open roaming. We've been talking about it at Cisco Live as well. Cisco did presentation on open roaming. They actually deployed open roaming at their different Cisco events, Cisco Live, and so on. So if you attended any of the recent Cisco events, you might have even got to try open roaming for yourself. And I also believe that the Contention Window podcast with Scott and Tony also talked about open roaming. So it's not new. If you don't know what open roaming is, you can watch the videos from Mobility Field Day to go over the technology and what it does. But pretty much what open roaming allows you to do is it allows you to seamlessly connect to a Wi-Fi network, securely and without having to even think about it. It's an evolution or an alternative to Passpoint. If you remember Passpoint, Hotspot 2.0 or Edge 2.11u. And it's Cisco. It's kind of like open roaming is kind of like a Cisco initiative, and they're trying to evolve Passpoint, I guess, from their standpoint. And they're working with the Wireless Broadband Alliance to try to make it a standard and have as many people and companies participating in the project, right? I guess their goal is to have everyone join the project. And so they could deploy open roaming. We could deploy as engineers open roaming on any environment, not just on Cisco environment, but on any environment to help us out to, authenticate and onboard securely a lot of people. Open roaming also allows you to seamlessly roaming between the Wi-Fi and the cellular network. So the idea would be, you're home, you're connected at home, you start your day connected to Wi-Fi, then you leave, you take your car to go to work, and then your phone seamlessly connect to the LTE network, just like how it works right now. And when you arrive to work, or arrive at the airport, or arrive to the coffee shop, your phone seamlessly connects to the Wi-Fi, and then you just have this seamless connection to the internet, regarding at which mediums you're using, Wi-Fi, LTE, and then everything works perfectly. So I guess that's the idea behind open roaming, and the technology behind it is it's 802.11u, and it's using 802.1x to authenticate the devices to the network. But the difference between open roaming and Passpoint is that you have different identity providers. So instead of using your SIM card to authenticate to a service provider, you could actually use different credentials to authenticate to different identity providers, right? And here, if we want to take a practical example, anyone can become an identity provider as long as they register as an identity provider. And you could have, for instance, Google being an identity provider, and then offering their authentication platforms to authenticate users to the Wi-Fi. So, for example, you could go to a stadium, and if the administrator of the stadium used Google as an identity provider, you could just go in the stadium, and then if you had agreed to use your Google account to authenticate to the Wi-Fi, you could just walk in the stadium, and then your phone will use your Google credentials to authenticate you to the Wi-Fi, and then you just connect to the Wi-Fi seamlessly, right? So the user agreeing to be authenticated using a specific identity provider can just be done once. So the goal is to have that done when, let's say, when you buy your phone and you set up your phone. One of the setup step would be, do you agree to use your Google credentials to authenticate to Wi-Fi network? And if you say yes, now for any environment, any venues that allows Google to be an identity provider, you could just seamlessly connect to it. So it's a very good idea, as long as everyone participate to it. So we're just waiting on everyone to, embrace the open roaming technology, I guess. So we need important identity providers to be part of it. So Apple, it would be nice if Apple, Google, Samsung, all of the big, players can just embrace the program and become an identity provider. And then right now, we're not too sure. We talked a little bit about the pricing and how that works. So right now we're not too sure. Cisco is actually financing some of the some of the operational cost of open roaming. So we'll see how it evolves. We'll see if different vendors will take part of it, and hopefully I'm relying on the Wireless Broadband Alliance to be a platform for all the vendors to exchange on that subject and hopefully agree on something, and they can all work in the same direction to move the industry forward. The only thing that's concerning for me that at the same time we had Cisco presenting on Open Roaming at Mobility Field Day, but at the same time we had Aruba presenting on Passpoint. So it seems like they're not on the same page yet. So hopefully they'll just everyone will just work together and then move the industry forward. That would be very nice. Open roaming can also or even Passpoint can also be seen as an alternative to indoor cellular, right? So you could, instead of installing DAS, distribution antenna systems indoor, you could just leverage the enterprise Wi-Fi to just carry LTE or 5G traffic in the future. So that could be a nice add-on to the industry as well. So we'll see what the future will tell. We'll see how the open roaming will get implemented. I think it will be launched beginning of next year, 2020. So we'll see how it's implemented and how people are embracing the open roaming. Also, I think it's going to depend on the client support for either 2.11u. Most of the devices I've used worked with open roaming. So when I went to Cisco Live, even when I went to Mobility Field Day in the Cisco offices, we could use the open roaming. So what was cool is that I didn't need to connect to the Wi-Fi when I went into the Cisco building. My laptop and phone just picked up my open roaming profile from Cisco Live, and just I was just connected to the Wi-Fi. I didn't have to do anything. So my phone, which is a Samsung phone, my laptop, which is a MacBook Pro, and my iPad, they all connected to the open roaming without any problem. So I think client support is not going to be too much of a concern, hopefully, and we could support open roaming. I can see it, being supported in open environment, open networks, public networks. That would be very nice to start with. All right. So if you have, if you have any thoughts on what Cisco presented at Mobility Field Day, if you want to share anything, just feel free to leave comments in the show notes. So that's cleartosend.net/184. We'd love to hear what you think about it. And then hopefully we can have Roel give his thoughts on a future episode on what Cisco presented on. Maybe he will leave a comment in the show notes. We can also continue the conversation on Twitter at Clear2Send. You can also engage the other delegates on the subject, and you can also go to their website and leave comments and engage on Twitter about that. Mobility Field Day, if you want to find some more content about it, you can go to the Tech Field Day website and search for Mobility Field Day 4. And on Twitter, if you search for the hashtag MFD4, you can find a lot of conversation about it, a lot of content shared by the delegates during the event, and you can try to see different point of views. All right, guys, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week, talk about another presenters at Mobility Field Day with Roel. And then in the meantime, I wish you guys a good week, and we'll talk to you in the next episode. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.